Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. So excited for my next guest. His name is George Salas. He's based out of Houston, Texas. He's the CEO and founder of Empress Capital and Creative Short-Term Wealth. He is a real estate investor, national speaker, fund manager, and short-term rental investing operator and coach. George, what is going on? Thank you so much for taking the time, man. I know you're busy. You got so many cool things going on. You're traveling. You got your family stuff going on, but you are taking on some really big projects right now with Empress. I'm pretty excited for you.
Benson, first of all, brother, thank you for having me here. We've known each other for about 3 years, and I've been looking forward to being in here having this podcast discussion with you. So thank you, first of all, for having me here, man. I'm super excited.
You got it. No, it's been interesting. Our lives, how they've crossed paths many times over the last few years. We first met in a mastermind, and then had lots of conversations about doing business together. And you were always working on the short-term rental stuff, which you've had massive success in. Launched your coaching business, and then we ran into each other again recently at a fundraising summit, which has got the spark going again for some new potential JVs and partnerships. So what have you been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So recently our largest project is a $12.5 million portfolio we're purchasing. It's St. Louis, right? So we packaged in 18 single and small multifamily residential, and we are acquiring them through seller finance with the seller, and then essentially turning them into experiential short-term rentals, which is our model. Now, you know how, when you get started in something, in business, especially, you start and you do the simplest or smallest type of prototype or product, and then you make it advanced. So at this point, we're creating these experiential, high-end, unique properties compared to what, 7 years ago. So super excited about that project. It's the largest project we've ever done. And we're just, on the path to closing this in the next couple of months. So thanks for asking.
That's pretty exciting. How do you come across that large of a deal? Was it just through networking, or do you have a marketing engine that's generating leads? How'd you come across that?
Yeah, great question. So I'm part of a mastermind, right? Just like you and I met in one. I'm part of another mastermind. There are higher level real estate investors, right? Like savvy, sophisticated, capital raisers, fund managers. And that's where we met, Matt, our partner, and seller. So we've got a really cool thing going there. We met there, and then a year later, we are now partnering up, right? So, and he's the seller, and he's also partnering with us in the whole project, as he has done over, he's raised over 150 million and then lent over 35 million to flippers, So we ended up creating this really, really cool partnership. And as far as acquisitions, I know that your platform is the best in the planet to acquire and find properties. This one happened to be a referral.
Amazing. That's awesome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, masterminds are such a good investment, aren't they? Like, a lot of times the good ones are a little uncomfortable. The entry fee to get into the right rooms can be a little uncomfortable, but if you leverage that time effectively, right? If you're very intentional about, the networking and getting to know people and building trust, and then thinking about, like, what are these win-win relationships I can come up with, it can turn into millions and millions of dollars in revenue. And I just don't think that the average person out there looks at a mastermind as a good way of generating revenue, but more of a place of just networking and building relationships.
I agree. I think most people think when they spend $10, $15, $20,000, this is the mastermind I'm talking about is a $20,000 a year mastermind. They're like, oh my God, I've got to spend $20,000. But the real ROI is in on a deal that you could get there or the knowledge you can acquire. Knowledge is everywhere nowadays, right? You can find it on YouTube. You buy some books. I mean, the same knowledge that you acquire inside these masterminds is going to be in books, just a little more packaged in. The real ROI is in the people that you meet, right? In the relationships you build, in the trust that you build. We have been in that masterminds for 3 years, and we built our entire business, our entire infrastructure, the fund, all our private equity company through relationships in that masterminds over the last, I'm in my 3rd year, but now we're going about 2 years and maybe like 3 months. Every piece of it, Benson.
Wow.
So
Can you say the name of it, or is it private?
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. Of course. It's called Race Masters. And I got to give a big shout out to Hunter, right? Hunter Thompson runs this mastermind. Fantastic. I love the people in there. Super focused on value-driven relationship building. It's not just networking, it's not just knowledge, right? And it's focused on capital raising. But I went beyond that, right? When you pay that much money to be in those rooms, you've got to make sure that you use, right? And you use every little piece of there. Imagine you're trying to build something you've never done before, right? Like infrastructure for a fund. And I went in there and I was able to find the resources I needed. I had to dig a little bit, right? The coaches just directed me in the right directions, right? So one of the coaches was like, hey, here's the person you've got to find for developing a pitch deck. Here's the person you've got to find to build a financial model. Here's the person you've got to find to find the fund admin team that's going to do the administration of the fund, right? That sort of thing. And it wasn't immediate. It literally took, Benson, maybe 6 months or so to put together and really learn, hey, I think I want to go this way, because everybody has a different opinion, right? When you're building this type of business. So for me, it was just understanding, like, hey, how is this guy doing it, and how does that apply to my business model, right? How does this other guy, building his model, and how can I build a competitive edge in my business that's very similar to his, just in a different niche, right? So I just grabbed little pieces here and there. And it was more like about feedback, right? Because as a visionary, most of us visionaries, I consider myself a visionary, and so are you, right? We have ideas, and when we listen to something, the ideas start flowing, right? So for me, it was like flowing ideas, and I just didn't know which way to go. And a coach or somebody that mentors you can put you in the right path and can ask the right questions, right? So super happy, super glad that I joined that mastermind. And yeah, man.
I love them too. I'm part of a handful. There's 2 or 3 that I've, backed out of, and a lot of it is just not that they're bad, right? It's just timing is everything, and what you're focusing on needs to align with what the core focus of that group is too. Because it's always good, and you always build relationships, and you hate to leave if you need to, right? To move on to bigger and better things, because you've built strong relationships, but you can still meet with those people outside of the mastermind, right? You get contact information, and, maybe you move on to something that's different and another path. And, and that's kind of what you've done with your career, right? Because you've been doing this since 2018, right?
That's right.
When you got into real estate, and you started with, short-term rentals, and you built a nice size portfolio. And I like how you really niched that into, these luxury type, experiential type short-term rentals. And then now you're doing fundraising, which is supporting that, but also other projects. But tell me more about the STR business. Why did you decide to niche into these experiential type environments instead of just kind of doing status quo?
Yeah, absolutely. Just so that I provide a quick background, when I started real estate, I had come from the hospitality industry, right? So I used to run a marketing company that marketed, produced, and hosted events across Houston between 2007 and 2017. And towards the end of that career, I just realized that, as much passion as I had, I didn't really have the skills I needed to, just really step to the next level of my life and business, right? So I lost in one investment deal that I got into as a limited partner, like being a partner without say so. That's what a limited partner is. And then it had just those things had just driven me to really want to do something else. I knew I was meant for something bigger. So real estate for me was a sort of a like, hey, I'm done with this thing, and I've got to find something better. And that's going to be sustainable. That's going to create long-term wealth for my family. I've always wanted to build a legacy. I've always wanted to leave something for my family, help other people on the way to do it, and make an impact in the world. For me, that was the main driver at the beginning. Did I know how to do it, how I was going to do it? Absolutely not. But I did jump into a couple of books that started me, right? One of them was The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And another one was like Expert Secrets, right? To like, Russell Brunson Expert Secret, which allowed me to really understand what I really wanted to do with the knowledge I would acquire. So moved into short-term rentals after actually doing fix and flips, Benson. So I started doing fix and flips in 2018. I was doing wholesaling. I probably, did about $250,000 in, not probably, I think I did around 225 to 250 in revenue, and then 100,000 my first year. So a little over 325-ish my first year of real estate. And 100,000 of that came through the first short-term rentals that I acquired, right? And then for me to be in a transition and making that type of revenue was just spectacular. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? I was doing well, but really what I needed was consistency, and I needed more predictability, right? So at that time, the smaller short-term rentals allowed me to have that, right? And then what I mean smaller was like I was renting these smaller apartments and then subleasing them. That's how I got started, and this is 2018. I would rent like 5 or 10 apartments. And by the end of 2018, I had 20. By the end of 2019, I had 45-ish, like between the houses and the apartments. So out of those 45-ish, only 3 or 4 were houses. And that's when I was like, okay, cool. This is awesome. It creates cash flow. I can scale this business. But then COVID hit, and that model for me never worked again, right? And most of my properties were within a 2-mile radius of downtown, and the cash flow was just not the same because most of these cities didn't recover, right? So my necessity was the number one reason why I jumped into short-term rentals, just to go back to the question, right? Necessity of consistency and predictability of cash flow to pay the bills, right? Then when I realized what worked was actually after COVID, when I was moving all these smaller units into more larger properties, right? And these were more single family. So I was turning some of these fix and flips and wholesale deals that I was buying through creative finance or hard money, right? And then I was like, okay, let me just try this. And I did, and it worked. During COVID, my highest performing short-term rentals were my houses that were in the suburban areas. So then I was like, I think there's something here that's bigger. I was learning the business, only 2 years in the business. And then I came across a really cool pool house in the South Houston part of area. Part of Houston, the South Houston part of Houston, and I took a lease. It was one of my last leases. And that property started generating over $170,000 to $180,000 first year. So while I was jumping onto that one deal, I realized just a couple months in, this is 2021, right? April, that's where the game was. So we really focus on perfecting the game, right? Meaning larger homes that sleep more, that have larger amenities, that type of thing. And then I turned all of my portfolio into these larger homes, right? I was still doing 3 bedrooms and up, but then I ended up, actually now we only have a little bit below 20 houses in our personal portfolio, but we are focusing on acquiring portfolios or larger assets that have these larger properties. Or if it's not a larger property, I'm referring, the word experiential, just to give you quick context, means customer centric, right? Creating an experience based on the customer needs. So what these properties provide with larger amenities, they provide a lot more experiences, aka a lot more amenities, right?
For example,
like if you rent a 5-bedroom and it's 2 families, right? And compared to a hotel, this one property is potentially going to have an outdoor kitchen, a pool, amenities for the children, a playground, like a hot tub, places for the family to hang out. And then if you break that down per person, that's the second reason why short-term rentals and experientials are going to be the future and already are, right? So if you break that down per person and you have a group of 15 people, right, and you're paying $1,000 a night, who wins? Everybody wins, right? Because the operator creates $2,000 to $4,000 in revenue per weekend, and then the guest actually gets to enjoy an amazing place with all the amenities they want for their family. And if you break it down per person, it's less than $100 per person, or maybe 150, right, per person. Where in a hotel you have a little space with no amenities, right? So that's one of the big drivers here. The next driver, I think, is Benson, is the fact that millennials, right, are the largest consumer group right now, and they love the ability to click a button and be able to book something or buy something, aka Airbnb, aka Amazon. Why these companies grew so large so fast, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So you're really like leaning into these luxury and experiential type rentals. And you got rid of the rest of the portfolio, the smaller apartments and stuff. Did you consolidate those, or did you just kind of like peel them off along the way?
Yeah, consolidated
Yeah.
everything and moved a lot of that furniture couldn't even be moved. So we had to sell it off or give it
Yeah.
away and, create a new strategy. But we did consolidate for the most part, right? So
Right.
today we can't even use any of that stuff just because of the quality of homes that we provide. Everything
Yeah.
is top notch, right? It makes a huge difference when it comes to the rental income.
Yeah. That's important. I've noticed that too. I mean, I stayed at one of the nicest hotels I stayed in a long time. I went to Boston a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago, and we stayed at this really nice hotel, and it was gorgeous. Like everything was operated off of this iPad, and you push a button, all the lights come on. It was all Alexa powered. So you'd be like, Alexa, lights on. Alexa, close the
Smart hotel.
shades. And
Wow.
it was really beautiful. And I hadn't taken a bath in like 20 years. And it was like the bath was like so nice. I'm like, I'm just gonna take a bath. And I actually got in the hot water, and it was like bath bombs and stuff. It was
Nice.
definitely an experience. It wasn't in a short-term rental, but just like that experience part of what you're saying is something I hadn't experienced in a long time. But tangent. Um, so now you're going into more like fundraising, right? So you've got into
Mhm.
Hunters Group, right? And you decided to shift a lot of your time and your resources into fundraising. And this is with Empress, right? That's the capital raising arm of your empire.
That's correct. The Empress is a asset management slash wealth management firm that raises capital to purchase, renovate, and manage experiential short-term rentals. And that's the arm we've been building over the last about year and a half. So, and that,
Okay.
yes, that is the reason why we got into a couple of masterminds, with Race Masters being one of them. Mhm.
So you're still focused on the STRs, even though you started the fund. It's just you figure out a different way of scaling your operations by leveraging other people's money, right? That's basically the whole plan.
Yeah, every smart investor, Benson, uses leverage to scale, right? And at some point, I mean, you can't do that unless you really know that you could produce results. I mean, you can, but you shouldn't. Yeah, right. So you've got to be able to produce results before you jump into playing with other people's money. So for us, it was about, understanding and figuring out like what worked. And then now we're even taking we're taking ahead of the curve, right? We are moving ahead of the curve by going into a very much more niche space than everybody else, because people are still stuck into the nicer homes. We're going experiences. Every property we do is niche. So moving in and figuring out like how do we scale our portfolio was the simple way of how we got into this business. It was my wife and I just sitting down and just saying, hey, what are our goals for 2022, right? Okay, well, I will learn how to raise capital, and I will learn, we want to scale our real estate portfolio. So between that year for us was just learning and seeing what options are out there, and I learned. And then in 2023, we decided to pull the trigger into more experiential assets. We bought, I think, about 8 different assets that year. And then we finished creating the fund towards the beginning of 2024. So like the whole entire shift, was sort of an accident per se. And I mean, you're an entrepreneur. I'm pretty sure you know that, right? So things happen.
Oh, things happen. Sometimes it's for the better. Sometimes it's not. But that's the way you just have to roll with it. Like, you got to take chances in business. Sometimes you got to jump in with both feet. Yes, you want to do your research, and sometimes people can get into this place where they just perpetually educate and don't take action. So, the fact that you did that, says a lot about how you operate. But you said something pretty well there too, is like, if you're going to use other people's money, like, you don't want to learn about business and make mistakes with other people's money. Like, you want to have a proven process, because that becomes your track record. If you do a bad deal with other people's money and then you go to try to do another one, you're going to have a hard time doing it.
I totally agree. So for us was figuring that out first, right? And then jumping into something by accident, but we already knew the process and we've perfected it over and over. And then from there, as a visionary, I am stickler for developing a vision and reverse engineering our entire strategy. So it doesn't take that, it's not that fast, Benson, but for me, like 6 months to put together a large vision was enough. Like, it took me 6 months to figure it all out, to plan, to create and reverse engineer the vision, and then another 6 months to like put together the fund. So you talk about a year building something out while still managing a full portfolio. Now my wife runs everything in the portfolio. Now we've got a full-fledged property management team, staging teams, asset managers. So now I'm solely focused, right? So you can't do too many things at once. But I pivoted personally that focus from running operations up until 2022 to stepping back and helping build our family's legacy by focusing on building a scalable model, aka the fund, to be able to scale, and then helping other people while doing it, right? Because with the coaching and the investor model, right, the syndications or funds, you're able to help other people by creating returns for them or by helping them acquire, right, a deal or a property. Right. So, yeah, man.
What has your experience been in fundraising? Right. Because it sounds glamorous. Like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to raise money. Right. And then you do your first pitch. Right. And they're like, who are you? Why would I even give you my money? So how was that for you? Like, starting off with fundraising, getting the objections, getting the no's, and getting ghosted by people who are like, oh yeah, I'd love to do this. And then you never hear from them again. Like, what's that process been for you?
If you had asked me this question in 2021, I would have said, I feel like it's just like you're offering a product and you're selling something. But today, my answer to that is like, people want to invest in deals, they'll invest in people. So, through my last couple of years, I have not raised as much money as you would think. Spent a little bit under $1 million, but with the relationships I've created and with the partnerships that I've created within the last 2 years is where the millions will come so that we can execute our projects, right? So for me, fundraising was something brand spanking new, and then it sort of shifted into like, how do I like create value by providing more value? So that's where the education jumps in, right? You're in education, and if you want to raise millions of dollars, that people need to learn and understand your business model and how you operate so that they can trust you and love what you do before they give you any money. So for me, it was, okay, I'm going to focus on building this infrastructure, right, and putting together the fund, and then I'm going to focus on creating the team, and then I'm going to focus on creating the partnerships. And then from there, I'm going to continue to build a relationship with all of those, plus my network, my community, right? And then right now we are focusing on creating tons of content, free live streams so that we could build even more value there. Because I mean, I don't plan on stopping what we're doing and or raising 10 million tomorrow. It takes time, effort, patience. And that's what I tell everybody. You can't build an empire in a day, right? Rome wasn't built in a day, and you can't build any business in a day. It just takes time, effort, grit, sacrifice, and a lot of patience, brother.
Oh yeah. And it's a long sales cycle too, right? So like when people are thinking about putting 50 to 100 grand into a project or more, like this is their hard-earned money that they've, been working for a long time to earn, and they're putting a little bit away each time. And so for them to part ways with that is a big decision. And so that whole sales process of, getting them comfortable with the deal, getting them comfortable with you know, answering all their questions and getting to the point where they're like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to do this. It does take a lot of time. And so, but you've been able to build a track record too along the way. How has that changed your sales process to be able to show them like, here's all the deals that I've done. We just
Yeah.
want your support, right? Like we've already got a proven process.
For me, at first it was about just utilizing the track record, and putting it in front of the people in this mastermind. Because it was like figuring out how to build a team, Benson, right? Figuring out what I need to do to launch a fund, right? And figuring out how am I going to raise $10 million, right? And all these things. So I had no process because I was starting something from scratch. In the mastermind, I would attend every coaching call, right? And I'm talking about there's 5 coaching calls a week, and then they have the 2 every 2 weeks, which are the office hours, the main one, right? And so I was going to like 4 or 5 a week, you know. So putting together the how first, like how do I do it, and then hiring the help, hiring the attorney to do the paperwork, hiring the person to do XYZ. And then as I did that, I was also pretty much interviewing, you know, potential partners, aka building relationships with these partners. And we would put together, like we would just set up Zoom meetings, and I was trying to see what their unique ability was, and if they could fit what I have built. Because I reverse engineer, I built an accountability chart at first, right? And then I realized that, where would I fit in this whole thing, so, and then I started figuring out, okay, I need this role to be filled, I need this role to be filled, I need that role to be filled. And then as I met these people in this mastermind, I was figuring out like, okay, this guy has X skills which are great for this role. That's how I built the whole thing. The capital raising didn't really come until later, even though I was always looking for a capital raiser, right? A capital raising partner. Um, Nobody wanted to partner with us at first that was a capital raiser, because they wanted someone with a fund proven track record, and we didn't have it. And we didn't have a lot of credibility. But as we built more trust and credibility with these people, and we showed them what we could do and within the community, right? AKA by bringing value, getting on these calls, and really just speaking about how we could bring value. Somebody would ask a question, I would answer. Somebody would make a comment, I would, add something. Specifically, if it was about short-term rentals, I would really go on, right? That's how people get to know you, even though you're not directly talking to them. So we built trust in the community. I built trust in the community, and then I was able to create the partnerships throughout those 6 months, right? And then the capital raising didn't come until later, Benson, right? So I think that's where I was going in the last stop before the internet went off. But yeah, brother, I mean, it's been an amazing journey to just be able to like go back and think of how we put this together. If I was going to do it again, I would try to figure out like how do I do it in a different order, because it took a long time, and it was a lot more work than I thought.
Mm.
Yeah.
What was the biggest lesson in that? Or if you would rearrange the order, what would you do first next time?
I would learn how to structure my fund before I hire an attorney. And before I asked him to be on meetings every single week-ish for like a couple of months, and before I paid him a lot of money to coach me on things, so I would figure out all about how you structure a fund properly. So what I did is I first hired the attorney, and then I asked him a bunch of questions, and then I went to the calls. So I would sort of reverse engineer, take 2 to 3 months to figure out how to structure before I paid $20,000 to an attorney to put it together. Right. That was the first thing I made a mistake on. And that took me like three months, maybe 4. Right.
To figure
So
that
that's
out, that you had done it a little bit wrong. How much
yeah.
money do you think that cost you?
Um, Not very much, because it was all built in terms of like the value of money on a time basis, a few months, obviously, but I spent so much more time than I spent money because I already paid his attorney. So I was just
Right.
spending a lot of time with him. So if I would have learned how to structure first, and I would have had someone directed me, because everybody was teaching me different ways to do it. And I was like, I don't know which way to do it. So if I would have figured out specifically, someone would have told me, hey, for short-term rentals, this is what you need to do because of this reason. You create 3 classes of shares, right? One is it has an IRR of 20%. The other one, 21, 22, and it's 500 and plus. One is up to $500,000 in capital. The other one is 500 to a million. That was a million and up, which is, I mean, I know I'm talking a lot, but I would have, oh, okay, but nobody told me that. They were just telling me how they did it, right? And because I didn't specifically ask, how did you launch your short-term rental fund? Or how did you create this structure? So I was
Right.
like just listening to what they were doing, and I put my thoughts together. Then I looked at the competitors for a couple of months, and I would watch their webinars. I would see what they're doing to create a competitive edge. How do I become different? Right? How do
Right.
I make things better? So all of this shaped the idea of what I needed to do when it came to launching our product, right? So over 6 months.
Are these different funds, how different are they for different asset classes, like an STR versus a multifamily versus, say, like a self-storage fund? Are they significantly different when you look at them?
Not necessarily, Benson. They are pretty much all very similar. Okay. The biggest difference is, for example, if you're gonna do there's one fund for unaccredited investors, it's a Reg D, right? And there's another fund for non-accredited, also Reg D. Those are 90% of the funds out there, but then there is another regulation, right? It's called a Reg A. And then those are completely different. In the world that we live in the Reg D world,
Right.
right? And we want 25 to $50,000 investors minimum. We take 1 million, and those investors that provide 1 million get way better economics. So the difference in the structure of these funds, very minimal. Now there is one specific fund that you can modify, and you could buy a lot of asset classes in, or you could partner with. So this specific fund, we have that specific fund, but we are only doing one asset class. But this fund gives us the ability to partner, to invest passively, and then to lead or operate, right? So um, we can talk offline to go really deep into funds, and
Yeah.
I know we discussed about just having a discussion on that. I'll be happy to, you know, break it down. But yes, that one specific fund is, I think it's a better option for somebody that wants to go into different asset classes. Mhm.
Got it. Yeah, you can really get in the weeds with this stuff. There's
Yeah.
just so many layers to it. But that's what's so cool about this business, is that you can stay very niche and you can scale one little thing that you've done 1,000 times before, and you can do it multiple markets, and you can just do bigger dollar deals, or you can start leveraging different strategies, like moving from just doing STR and going out and getting, hard money or maybe some private money to doing a fund. And it's just a different way of doing more business and getting a better ROI. But I'm excited for you. This is going to be a fun process for you. Where do you see this going next with Empress? Is it more STR? Do you think maybe you'll do some multifamily or some other asset classes?
Thank you for that question, Benson. So the vision for Empress is to create an asset management and that actually operates world-class vacation properties, right? So around the country, right? So our goal, 1 billion in assets, huge goal, right? I can't even see what it looks like to manage 100 million yet, so that's the vision for Empress. Now, we are building an infrastructure, aka an investment club, because we have communities, right? So, I mean, you have a community, you know how that goes. So we have communities, aka we have an SDR community, a short-term rental community, and then one of my partners has an accredited investor community. So we're building an investment club, which is going to be an infrastructure that will be able to partner in other asset classes, right? So now for George Salas and his Empress team, no plans to go into different asset classes. But if we're able to really focus on the capital piece, right, that one entity that does the capital will not only invest in short-term rentals, but it'll partner with other operators in other asset classes, right? So that's something that's on the works right now, for the next 6 months to 12 months, however long it takes.
That's exciting,
Yes,
man.
sir.
But
Thanks.
it's been a crazy journey for you, right? Because you weren't even born here, right? You were born in Peru,
Born in
right?
Peru and raised in Peru.
Raised in Peru. And, when you came to the US, I read someplace that you had some challenges with like learning English and you've gotten through all these different things in your life. I heard a story about like your parents, getting divorced and being raised by your mom but none of that stopped you from you have a bunch of different reasons why things won't work for you, right? But you
Mhm.
never had a pity party. You never sat down and said, "Oh, I can't do this," right? You've accomplished all these things across your career. Was there ever a point in your life where there was like a turning point for you, where like an event or a moment where you realized like I'm going to do big things? Like I've come from basically nothing to living in an adobe home in Peru where part of the
Mhm.
walls cave in to now you're going to be running potentially $1 billion fund. What happened?
You know, when you go up so poor that your house falls and collapses and and you just see what's out there in the world, and then you move from that world to a world that we live in today, right? Like aka the US, you see the opportunity. So what takes someone from that world to this world to be successful and then someone not to be successful, right? For me, right, it was the drive and the fire inside this guy right here has always been there. And it's like, how do I create this for my family? How do I create these partnerships and build a legacy? How do I make impact in the world? And the questions I asked myself were how, right? But the how was always out there in other people. The how to everything is right here across that Zoom call. The how is building the relationships with those people. So I today don't ever see anything we do, and I don't ask myself, how do I do it? I just ask myself, who do I need to meet? Right. So first was the drive. Then it was like the passion and the push that I wanted to be successful. But then it turned, and I'm going to tell you when, right? In 2017, when I was transitioning into real estate, I didn't share this, but I lost over $300,000 of my own cash investing into someone else's deal. And I had never invested into someone else's deal because I didn't know how to do it, but I had the funds because I had a great business and I was successful in my business. and I had the funds to invest. I put it in someone else's deal over a course of about a year and a half, and it was a venue, right, on a commercial lease. And a year and a half later, everything was done. It was shut down. That was not just a rock bottom, but it was another fire lit up in my booty, and it was like, George, what the hell are you doing? You could be so much better than this, right? Don't stay where you're at, right? Your potential is there. You have the fire, you have the passion, but it doesn't just take fire and passion or drive. It takes skills. Skills trump passion 100 times over. So what I did is I went to acquire those skills. And once you have skills, the next step is like figuring out like, hey, now I've got skills. This is what I bring to the table. I'm freaking great at it. Like, who wants to partner with me? And then the partnerships come naturally if you're really good at something, right? So I read a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Carl Newport. I definitely recommend that, and I realized that I followed that path, so skills are what brought me here today. And I'm sure they are what have brought you to where you are today as well, right?
Oh yeah. So many places in my life where things just didn't go the way they were supposed to, and financial setbacks, and lots of reasons to be put in a comfortable setting and just stay there, right? Like just leave the 9 to 5 and go get a normal job. I've had many opportunities to do that, but it's just, I don't know if I could ever do it again, right? That entrepreneurial spirit is deep in me. Like you said,
I
that
love it.
fire, it's there.
I love
So
it.
it's always just figuring out ways of doing bigger and better things, new opportunities, but also staying excited about getting up every morning, right? If you just get into the mundaneness of even just being an entrepreneur, like you can easily go out there as an entrepreneur and create a job for yourself where you
Hmm.
just do the same thing every day, and you work for yourself, but it's still a job. So how do you leverage up? And so that's one of the reasons why I do this podcast, is so I can talk to exciting people like you who are doing exciting things, making big moves, and using that as inspiration and getting new ideas and building partnerships, and potentially doing business together on different JV opportunities. Like, this is one of the main reasons why this podcast is so important to me, is to keep that fuel, bring more fuel in for that fire.
I love it. I love it. And you have my full support on the podcast. I can't wait to share the episode with everybody out there whenever it's ready. And I really appreciate you having me, brother. I'm super excited about the journey and also building, continue to build a relationship between us. I think most people out there just they don't realize the potential of themselves. They never do, right? A couple of things that I want to share with the audience out there today, I'm sure they'll find value in, is that if a kid from Peru that lives in an adobe house can do it, you out there can do it, right? And it's those little things, and just honing something that you're really good at, such as this, your short-term mental skills, or you being able to create a fund or something, whatever it is out there. I'll never stop. I'm so passionate, about what we do, about what we're building. And now my head is just shifting towards, how do I create this impact thing, right? Now first was survive, create cash flow, right? And then was like build and scale, right? And at the same time, as you're shifting your thinking, like, how do you make an impact? And if you sort of start learning from different angles of how to build it, to me, it's the journey that you've got to enjoy. Right. So one of my number one core, like actually my number one core value, Benson, is growth and learning. And then number two is excellence. So by growing and learning in every little thing that you do, every area. So like if I need to do something, I go and study it first, right? And then I learn it, and then I do it right. Right. So that is a concept and a psychology, right, that will live and will make anyone out there successful. Grow, learn every day, and do everything in excellence, the best way you can. So man, thank you for having me here, brother.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been amazing to get to know you a little bit deeper, and You just shaved off a little bit of your knowledge for us, but I know that's going to be so helpful for the audience. But thanks for being here. And for everybody who is watching this and is interested in working with you, how can they find you? Where do you live on the internet, or how can they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a social media site, George Salas 360. In there I've got a free training, and then our investing companies, empresscapitalgroup.com, right? So if you message or whatever you want to connect out there, that's where you can find me. And yeah, we're looking for great people with great excellence, and we'll love to connect with anyone that will love to work with us.
Awesome, you guys. So please reach out to George if you want to invest in experiential luxury short-term rentals. Empress is where you want to put your money. You can tell by his fire that he's going to do you right. So definitely go check that out. And thanks for checking out this episode of the REI Hacker Podcast, where we have really inspiring guests just like George come on and tell their story, share their expertise and what they're working on. We talk about business, entrepreneurship, real estate investing, but most importantly, we just want to give you the inspiration to go out there and take action and create wealth for yourself and for your family, and create that legacy like George was talking about. So keep an eye out for more amazing guests. Check us out on YouTube. We're also on Apple and Spotify for those audio people. But just so happy you guys took the time to check us out, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.